Chinese food therapy. Looked into it. Okay, some people, both Chinese people, yes, obviously. It is one of those topics where it's debatable, even though it's been around for over 5,000 years. There's parts of it that are proven, written and proven, but it has to deal with a lot of feelings and nature and things, and so a lot of people don't want to take it as science. It is incredibly complicated, I will tell you that, and so this is the very, very, very basics of it. There are doctors who study Chinese Chinese therapy, and it includes things like acupuncture, cupping. It also includes the food therapy that I'm going to talk about. There's a lot of different things that you need to eat, and based off of what your body's going through, what the weather is like, what you're feeling like, you would eat different things. And so that's what I try to give you in that little packet. If you want, I can send you more, but if you go see an acupuncturist or anybody who does acupuncture, they have this knowledge. They know what it is that you should be eating and what you shouldn't be. Chinese foot massages, there's only a couple that actually do it correctly. Each part of your foot has a pressure point and it means something. Courtney went last week on Friday, and the lady immediately told her, "You're not getting enough sleep, are you?" And she was like, "How did you know?" Well, she's got 2 babies at home, so she's not getting enough. But through just touching, they can also tell if you're pregnant through different touches too. And there's also, so there's a theory that using what you have as a person can help diagnose what another person has too, just based on nature and the things that are around. So I'm kind of going to go into detail, but I think you're more interested in the food aspect. I am. The reason why I chose this topic too is I constantly get phone calls from my mom. You're not even eating enough warm foods. You're eating too many cold foods. You'll hear that a lot when you're growing up in a Chinese family. It's too cold. Everything's too cold. Often you'll hear Chinese people don't drink cold water. That's another thing. The goal of Chinese food therapy is you want to be warm, slight hot, as opposed to cold. Cold is where you don't want to be. And so you'd rather be warm or hot as opposed to cold. So I'll go into that in a little bit. But pretty much, doctors first have to determine what it is that's wrong with you. And through Chinese food therapy, they've decided that it's the balance of everything that's around you. So balancing everything else out without medications should be able to help you feel better. And so this is where these theories come from. It goes back as far as 2000 BC, and it's the Yellow Emperor's Classic. If you look into it, that is the book where acupuncture started too. He's the one that drew the pictures of people and then put all the pressure points. And he wrote this as a discussion. It's not a book where it's you do this, this, and this. It was a documented discussion between him and different people that he met throughout life. And so it's classified into food groups based on taste, the form, and the characteristics of the food. Taoism and Confucius both also have a lot of influence in this. Taoism occurred after, and so Taoism is very simple. Taoism is probably one of the most simple things. Everything should be balanced and everything is equal. That's it. There's no real laws to it. And so that comes hand in hand with Chinese food therapy because the goal is to balance everything out. So Taoism really, really helps you understand the Chinese food therapy. Alrighty. And so it's closely related to acupuncture and medicinal plant medicine and follows the same diagnostic principles. It focuses on qi. Do a lot of you know about qi? Okay, so qi is your life force, what you have that makes you live. People might want to think of it as like your spirit, your soul, something, but it's what keeps you who you are. This is the reason why Westerners have a hard time adopting Chinese food therapy, because qi is the focus of Chinese food therapy, making sure your insides are good. And so the idea of qi is just a force, and so it's not scientific, and so that's hard for us to say, oh, let's give you an aspirin for your qi today. And so they use food and different other methods to help enforce it and make it better. And so yin and yang, I don't know if you can see that, but yin and yang is the basics of it. Two sides. A lot of people think that something is yin, something is yang. It's not that clear cut. It depends on what you're talking about. Ice compared to water would be more of a yin, whereas steam compared to water would be more of a yang. So water can be yin or yang depending on what form it's in. So you need to compare it to what it is that you're using it for. So if you're stir frying something, you have to think that you're adding a heat element into something that might be cold, making it then maybe neutral. So there's different components that you add into your food that make it more yin or more yang, but you need both. You can't have one without the other. So yin imbalances, I'll leave this up later if you guys want, and I can send it to you. But pretty much, these are the different types of things. You'll hear dampness a lot. Dampness and dryness are the two other words that you'll hear a lot. Dampness is associated with cold and yin. Dampness is like wet, and you just feel down. Like it's a heavy energy that's on top of you. And so areas that are humid are considered damp areas, and so you would add certain foods into your diet to counteract the dampness. And then for cold things, so like if your health is worse in cold weather, you would eat more yang foods as opposed to yin. So same as yang, and I'll show you this guy, I'll print it out if you need, but dry skin is often one of the things that is associated with yang, so you would add more yin into it. And I'll give you the different foods you can use for these. So seasonal eating is where most of this comes from. In the spring, summer, late summer, autumn, winter, you all have different things to eat. All of them are associated with your organs, and so we're getting close to summer. And so summer season is definitely a time when you need to watch the heart and small intestine. The heart can be, there's certain foods that affect both of those, and obviously Brussels sprouts, dandelions, scallions are good for that, and tomatoes. You'll find a lot of nightshade. I know some people know what nightshade vegetables are, but in the summertime it seems to be nightshade vegetables are better for you. Alrighty, taboo eating. These are the things that you need to be careful of. Don't go excess. So one of the things that I said, cold and solid foods. Cold foods are one of those things that our body just does not like to digest. There's definitely debates about this. I'm just repeating what I've learned. Cold versus hot. A lot of people think that cold water shocks your system. And so that's why we try to stay with warm or hot products, because everything inside is already warm. When we put something cold in, it shocks it. Some people want to shock their system, though. There are theories out there that if you drink cold water, you don't eat as much then, because everything is just kind of rigid and solid. It's in shock, so you don't want to eat as much. So there are benefits, but they are for different reasons, like losing weight, trying not to eat as much, and things like that. Fatty and fried foods, you definitely need them because it actually helps with constipation, but you need to limit how much it is that you're eating. So stimulants are fish and crustaceans. There's different things that will help you and the intestines kind of go through. And so definitely be careful what you eat and what you're eating it for. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the different things that I use today. And let me just go over the chart really quickly. So you guys have this chart too, and it has all the different kinds of theories, but I really wanted you to see the 5 tastes. So there's 5 basic tastes, and they're all related to a certain organ in your body. So for example, if you have high blood pressure, one of the things that they often will give you is bitter foods. Bitter foods, if you have never seen, I will bring it out in a sec, I bought one. Bitter melon is one of them. So bitter melon is something that you find in a lot of foods. But I knew that half of you would not eat bitter melon because I don't even eat bitter melon. And so I chose the other one. The other good bitter food to use is the lily bud. And so that's this guy right up here. And they come in 2 forms. There's 2 different packs that you can buy easily at 99 Ranch. And they're just called dried lily flowers. This one has salt on it. This one's purely dried. And so I'll leave these up here for you to see. But all it is it's literally a lily bud. And they take it, and if you want, you can even take each one and knot it and then use it later on. These ingredients, can you kind of figure out what you find it in? I want to see if anybody can, what?
I just have a question. Do you know who can't see what you're
Oh, you can't. Oh, okay, sorry. I'll switch it right now. If you were to ever go to a good restaurant and get a good hot and sour soup, everything that you got in there is supposed to be in a hot and sour soup. Hot and sour soup is one of the soups that is actually a yin and yang balanced with the things that they add inside. It is supposed to contain pig's blood, and so there are certain things in there that are beneficial but are a little bit funkier and more weird that people aren't used to. You see yet? Yeah? Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's go to the first recipe, and that's the lotus and burdock root salad. Lotus is not in season all the time, and it gets expensive because it cultivates for a long time. It takes about 3 months. And so this is how it comes when you buy it. It's bad luck to break them, so you don't break them. You can slice them later on. But I'll be honest with you, most of the time these days you buy them pre-packaged and they're soaked in liquid already. If you go to Korean supermarkets, they're in the refrigerated section by the bamboos and bean sprout area. These you can find fresh at 99 Ranch. And so the only problem with buying these, they're old. They're a lot older than the ones that you buy in the pre-packaged, and so they get a little grittier. What you have is the pre-packaged, pre-peeled one. But once you buy this, you take care of it like you would ginger. You scrape it off, the skin. Oxidizes really quickly too. So if you want, you can have vinegar and lemon next to you or just a bowl of water. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to scrape off the skin. Scraping skin off of a vegetable with a spoon is a lot better than using a peeler because you're not wasting a whole bunch of it then. You're just getting that very, very basic skin out off the food. And you do the same thing with ginger. So you just take a spoon and you just scrape it off. So I'm just going to keep going around. And then I'm going to slice it. There's also, in Chinese therapy, they choose not to eat raw foods. They feel like it's, excuse me. They feel like it's too much work on your stomach. It's the same idea as fermentation. They would rather you eat something that's been partially cooked or fermented. So if you look at tofu, they would say fermented tofu is better for you than regular soy tofu. And it's because it's already starting to digest for you, so it's better, it's easier for you to digest. And it's the same idea that you want what you're eating to be easily digestible in your body so that you can absorb all the nutrients. So to cut this though, you really need to be careful. That first section is always going to be dirty and not fun. So you're going to go in here and then slice. And then just let it soak in water while you're getting the rest of your ingredients together. The thinner you cut them, the thinner they are. They really don't break down as much as you think. It won't turn into mush or anything. You can cook this for 3 hours and it'll still stay this way. So you can take this, you can make chips with it, put it in the oven, and you can make lotus root chips, or you can stir fry it and make a salad, which is what we're going to do. But I'm going to keep that to the side, and then I'm going to show you burdock. Or goba. Gobo? Goba. Gobo. Gobo. Burdock. This one oxidizes even more. Both of these are roots, but they do not contain the starch content that a potato does, and that is why they're so good for you. They have very low starch content compared to a potato. So what I'm going to do is break this in half first, and the way that you do that is usually you do it at the edge of a table. And you break it in half so that it's easier to peel. This guy, use a peeler. It's very hard to peel without one. And then, at this point, you can use a julienner or you can use your food processor. If you use your food processor, what happens is it'll oxidize really, really quickly, and you kind of get a brown color out of it. which is fine because you're going to be adding soy sauce into this. But if you have a julienner like this, you can just julienne it and use what you need. It's got a nice like woody smell to it. It's very earthy, but it picks up on all the different flavors that you're going to add in. So I've got that, and then I've got my lotus root. And then I've got carrot and ginger. And the ginger you're just going to chop up. I have some chopped up with garlic already that I'm going to add inside. And then this is watercress. And I'm going to leave this here. This is, I consider it an Asian watercress. It's exactly the same as an American watercress, only it's finer. It's a lot thinner, so you can use the whole thing. You can use all of the stems and everything, which makes it that much better for you. So I just chop this up, and the way that you chop it up is grab all the leaves together and just go back and forth. And I'm going to cut all the way until the very end. It's not as spicy as regular arugula is, but it does have that kind of crunch and spice that you'd like to get from it. So that's about all I'm going to take, and that's going to go in at the very, very end. And then for the carrot, you would peel and julienne just like you would for the burdock root too. And again, if you have organic carrots at home, use the skin. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you can tell, you can see how the burdock is actually already oxidizing too. The carrot and watercress I'm going to keep raw. I'm going to saute the other stuff though. And all I'm going to do is, I'm going to turn this front one on. Perfect. I'm going to add a little bit of oil. If you're using a pan like this, this is a non-stick pan. You don't necessarily need to add oil. I like to add just a little bit because I like to caramelize it just a little bit. And I'm going to add this all in with a little bit of ginger and garlic. And I'm just going to cook that up. And I'm going to help it caramelize by adding soy sauce. And so I'm going to add that all inside, and it's going to slowly cook while we talk about the next recipe. So, any questions on that one? Yeah. Yeah. So after you get to this point, soak it in water. Same idea as green onions. Do we add green onions to this? No. But if you want, or Chinese celery is the same way too. All you do is you put it into chop it and then wash it. So chop it like that, put it in here, and it'll all float. So what floats? Dirt sinks, veggies float. So now I can let this soak like this. All the dirt's going to go, if I just rinse or just kind of run it around, I can go in and pick everything up and the dirt will be on the bottom. So same idea with scallions too. It'll fall right down to the bottom. And you use soy sauce and brown sugar in this. I don't have my brown sugar here. But mainly because these things taste like nothing. They really have no taste. You can make it taste like anything. And so add what you want. What's really good in this is also chili peppers. We add sesame oil into it, and then we're also going to be adding sesame seeds. And so really good, but doesn't have a lot of flavor. Really do whatever you want to it. Alrighty, so I'll let that cook. And then we'll go to the gluten-free chestnut cake really quick. I'm not going to turn. No, flakes. Flakes. Definitely use flakes. And for those who didn't notice, I did do it on purpose. I added my garlic and ginger into cold oil and then put it on, because that's how I get the most flavor out of it. If you don't like the taste of ginger and garlic, put it in hot oil. But if you like it, always start it in cold oil and add other veggies inside of it. That way you can kind of toss it around and coat it already. Alrighty, chestnut cake. Who knew there was chestnut flour? No? Yes. Yes, I know she would probably. Chestnut flour you can buy in two places. 99 Ranch or an Italian market. Italians use chestnut flour. Chestnut flour is from the water chestnut. So it's just this guy. They dry each water chestnut out and then they grind it into a powder. This is not easy powder to work with. It's almost like a whole grain. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. And this is the most classic way of making a cake in the Asian world, Asian culture. They don't like using leavening agents. What they like to do is they like to separate egg whites and egg yolks, beat them separately, and then fold them together, because you get the egg white fluff that's your baking soda or baking powder pretty much without all those chemicals inside. So in here I've got corn flour and I've got my chestnut flour. This is what it looks like. Looks like dried powdered paint or like eggshells. So you really work it through the mesh. I do the macaron class in here, and it's the same idea where you just don't feel like it's going to go through, but over time it will. You just need to keep working your hands through it and kind of pushing and forcing it through. You're okay with about a ½ teaspoon left over, but that's about all you want left. You want to try to get as much of this through as possible. So this is a gluten-free cake. And you can definitely switch out the flours if you want. You can do the same proportion with almond flour, walnut flour, any kind of flour. You just want that corn flour in there, though. Use a spoon. And you can even use a spoon. She gave me a really fine mesh one. And corn flour is not cornstarch. When you look in the store, Bob's makes one. Corn flour is this color. Corn flour is actually yellow. Oop, right here. It looks like this. So it's this yellow color. And if you can read Chinese or Korean, it's easier because they actually write it as corn flour as opposed to cornstarch. I'm going to do that. All right. So you've got a little bit left. It's okay. Don't put it in, but leave it aside. And then we've got 8 egg whites and 8 egg yolks. For the egg whites, for the egg yolks, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar and then beat. This is a part of baking where if you don't have a handheld mixer, you will hate yourself. There are some people who can do it by hand, just very, very, very hard. And the other thing is, when you're whisking, say you were to do this by hand, whisk with this hand and use this hand too. This hand is there to help you. Move the bowl. Go in opposite directions if you want. And when you whisk with your arm, not your wrist. A lot of people hurt themselves whisking with their wrist as opposed to their arm. You're just going to keep going. You want this to double up in size, which I'm not going to be able to do with by hand, but I will start my egg whites and talk to you about egg whites while I get that going. So, I'm going to just let this go for a second. I just want to show you. There are many people who think that you cannot add sugar into egg whites straight like that. You can. Misconception. You don't need cream of tartar. You don't need any of that. You can straight do that and you can make a perfect meringue. What you cannot do is leave any egg yolk in here. If you leave any kind of fat, whether it be butter, egg yolk, it will not come up. So when you're beating egg whites, you always want to make sure your bowl is clean and that you start slow, but you can add everything in there without a problem. So I'm going to let that go for a little bit longer while I show you something really cool, and I'm going to do it quietly so that this can go. Do I have people that go on Reddit a lot on here? No? Sometimes? This is the Reddit trick. How to separate an egg. Can you see? Yeah? You take an egg, you get an empty bottle. And then you got your egg yolk right there. You can do that constantly, all day long, yeah, and you can put it back in too. And then you can go back in. And you can go again. It's really fun. You ruin these after a while though, so that's almost there. Little bit more, little bit more. And then I'm also gonna add vanilla. I'm gonna add my vanilla in here. You can add it anywhere. Just because of time, I'm not gonna do this fully. I'm gonna leave it, and then I'm gonna finish it after you guys start trickling out so that you can see. But what I'm actually looking for, and I'm gonna, because it's too loud, what I'm actually looking for is that when I dip this in and I pick it up, there should be a tip right on here. You never look inside the bowl. There's a lot of people who look for meringue tips in the bowl. That's incorrect. You dip your blade in or your whisk in, pick it up, and it's what's here that you're looking for. You want it stiff. You want a pretty stiff peak. The main reason being you're gonna be folding. And so I'm gonna finish this once I'm done showing you the last one so that I can turn that back on so it's not too loud. But I'll go back to that and I'll show you guys how to fold it in a little bit. And then let me just go to the last recipe we have, and that is the, 5-grain rice. I'm just gonna tell you about the 5-grain rice. It is the most common thing that you get at a Korean restaurant. If you've ever gone to a Asian supermarket, in the rice sections, they have these little pre-packaged mixed grains. That's all that I did. I made my own pre-packaged mixed grain. So what's inside are black soybeans, which are not any different than regular soybeans. There's just a color difference. That's pretty much it. So black soybeans, and they look like this. And I also added red beans, which are adzuki, beans that look like that. And then the other stuff. You cook these two first, and we do a quick soak. So you bring it up to a boil, put a lid on it, turn it off for an hour, and that's a quick soak. Drain that water. It's important that you drain that water. That water will give you gas if you don't. It's very hard to digest that water. So you're gonna add that in, take it out, and then you're gonna bring it to a boil with 3½ cups of water. Then you add 2 more ingredients after these guys have softened up, and these are the cool ingredients. We've got millet, which is just a seed, and that's what it looks like right there. And it cooks up just like rice, and then I need to talk about this because this bothers me. This says peeled pearl barley on the outside of it. It is not barley. It's not even close to being barley. Let me show you. There's a picture of barley. The small picture is of barley, sorry, back there. The small picture is of barley. It kind of looks like wheat. That right one that you see is what we call Job's tears, koi. In Chinese, it's called yiren. Barley has a bad name sometimes because it's peeled. A lot of American barley is peeled, and so you automatically think it's not as healthy for you. This stuff, peeled pearl barley, the reason why they call it that is because in Chinese, the direct translation comes to barley. And so they just assume that in English, it's gonna be called barley too. It's not. They're completely different. They're not even the same plant, and one is incredibly healthy. This stuff is really, really healthy for you. You cook it the same way as you do rice, and you can add it into desserts, or you can add it into pretty much anything that you want. But again, it has a lot of, it has resistant starch, and it also has fiber. So it's really good for you. Do half rice, half this. Very, very, very healthy. And they come pretty big, they grow pretty big too. So that's what I use to make the 5-grain rice. If you are using brown rice, soak it. Definitely soak your brown rice before you cook it. And it does take about 15 to 20 minutes longer to cook brown rice, so remember that. Alrighty, so the last recipe, chicken with earwood, fungus, shiitake, and lily buds. Yeah. I soak for an hour. And then white rice I'll soak for 30 minutes. Yeah. Alrighty, last recipe that we have. Lily buds, fungus. And I'm not gonna use, I use fake chicken today. I didn't even use tofu, even though it's made with tofu. Oh, I actually have barley, so if you guys want to see the difference between the two, I'll leave it up here. This is vegetarian chicken. Same place, you can buy it in the refrigerated section by the tofu usually. It's just made out of soy. Kind of like, it almost feels like frozen soft tofu, I guess is the best way to explain it. It's not a vital wheat gluten that most of them are. And it just comes in a chunk like that, and I'm just gonna cut it into, you can cut it into whatever size you want. Bite size is usually good. So this will be my chicken for today. And then I've got shiitake mushrooms, lily buds, and the fungus, the black fungus. The black fungus comes in two forms. It comes like this, in the earwood shape almost, and it comes in strands. The strands are a lot easier to work with than having to cut each little one of these by yourself. So just buy the strands. It's the same price. It'll save you the trouble. Shiitake mushrooms. Shiitake mushrooms will vary in price, and there is a difference in taste for it. The expensive shiitake mushrooms are really, really expensive. I mean, like $100-some an ounce, it can get that crazy. This stuff is the cheaper stuff where it's like $3.99 a package. Soak it in hot water and de-stem it. So you want to make sure that you take the stem off before. I have one in here somewhere. I have a shiitake, I think. Maybe not. I don't have a shiitake in here. I thought I did. Nope, I don't. So you would soak it and then just chop it up into strips, into chunks, whatever you want to use. And then your lily buds you're also going to soak. So some of the lily buds, if they're starting to kind of open up at the top, that's when you would knot it. These ones are pretty nice, and so you don't need to knot those. You knot them just because sometimes they will kind of open up and look like a flower in your food, and sometimes people just don't like that. So I am going to start here, and I'm just going to add my chicken and my garlic and ginger into that and mix. The one ingredient that I chose not to add at the end, but you are more than welcome to add, are the goji berries. What the goji berries do to the dish is it just sweetens it up a little bit. So it's really nice in there if you like goji berries to add that in there, and it'll just sweeten it up just a little bit for you. And so if you look at each recipe while I'm waiting for this to heat up, I've given you kind of the yin and yang of each of the good ingredients that are in there. So if you look at the gobo one, the first one, it's all yin. It's all yin. And so what you would do is you could say to up the amount of garlic and ginger just to balance it out, because the garlic and ginger are the yang of it. So adding those two things kind of balances it back out when you're making that. But all of the main ingredients for the lotus burdock root are considered yin foods. So it could be good on certain days depending on what you're trying to look for. So I'm going to cook that up a little bit. Lost a piece. And then I'm going to add my lily buds and fungus and shiitake. And this is what I say about, I was just talking about Chinese food. We're very used to having Chinese food with sauces. Every Chinese food needs to seem to have a sauce to it. So what I did was I made a sauce with stock, like a veggie stock, and then I added cornstarch. I'm going to do it with water right now. But we're just so used to having Chinese food with a sauce that if you really need a sauce, you can make one. It's really easy. All it is cornstarch and water made into a slurry, or you can use your stock, which I did for this one today. And then I'm going to add soy sauce, just a little bit of soy sauce. And you can add it straight in there. It's really up to you. And then I'm going to add that in. So if you see what happens, it'll start to thicken up right away. So pretty much if you want to think about it, it is kind of like a hot and sour soup without the soup part of it. It's just the ingredients inside are so beneficial to your health that we use them all. So that is it for that. And then we're going to add scallions on top of that. And for the scallions or green onions, really up to you. And also in Asia, you don't find these as often as negi. Negi is the big one, and negi is more common than any other green onion in Asia, not these thin ones. So what you do is you take off the ends, take the knife and cut a slit right through the middle. Cut that in half again, line it up, and then claw your fingers, and then go in with the dice. So you would wash this the same way you would wash the watercress, but I'm going to finish that up so that's done, and then you can add a little bit of sesame oil and then add your green onions or scallions. Sesame oil never goes into hot food. It will taste horrible. Never try to cook with sesame oil. Sesame oil is a finishing oil. It turns rancid after it touches too much heat. So always use it as a finishing oil. So that's it with that, and then you just serve that with the rice if you want. For the burdock, just so that it was done, this is what it looks like. It's kind of caramelized on both sides, and then the burdock is definitely crunchy. I'm going to add my sesame seeds, and at the very end, I add my vinegar. And that way, it kind of gives it something to soak up, and then you get all the extra flavors into your salad. And you just let that soak. And then you serve that with your salad. And then, if you guys have any more questions, I'm going to stand right here, and I'm going to beat these egg whites up as far as I can. And you guys can watch me finish this. But if not, that's all that I have for you today, and come back. Thank you.